Captain Sarah Quinn stood on the bridge of the Etheris, her boots clicking against the cold metal floor. The bright red lights of the Galactic navigation system blinked in the dimly lit room, casting a somber glow across the faces of her crew. Outside, the vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly, but inside the ship, tension hummed like a tightly wound spring. She stared at the mission briefing on the screen, eyes narrowing. "Baba Yaga," she muttered under her breath. "Earth's most wanted criminal. They must be joking." Behind her, Sergeant Raza scoffed, arms crossed. "Another criminal to make an example of. We've done this 1,000 times before." "You'd think, wouldn't you?" Quinn replied, her voice steady but tinged with disdain. "They make it sound like she's some kind of ghost story. A human assassin that's been roaming the galaxy for decades. Makes you wonder how someone like that slips through the cracks." "It's Earth," Raza said with a shrug. "Who cares about a criminal from there? Especially after everything they've done, we're just cleaning up the mess." Quinn's gaze lingered on the mission file. Baba Yaga, real name Natasha Orlova, was a name that carried weight. Once a decorated officer in Earth's military, she'd vanished into the underworld after a botched mission. Her crimes were infamous: high-profile assassinations, sabotage, and brutal mercenary work. Yet despite her notoriety, the Federation had always dismissed her as a relic of a bygone era. The criminals of Earth were beneath them. "Don't be so quick to dismiss it," Quinn muttered, tapping the edge of her console. "She's managed to stay off the radar for too long. And someone like that doesn't just disappear without making waves." "Probably hiding out in some backwater system," Raza said, turning toward the door. "I'll start prepping the team." Quinn's thoughts, however, lingered on the file. She didn't like underestimating their targets. It was something that had kept her alive throughout her career. But this was different. The Federation had assigned this mission as a mere footnote in their operations. A quick, easy cleanup. "Raza, wait," she called out, her voice more commanding than before. "We'll be making a detour." The last known sighting of Baba Yaga was on Zarnath 4, a neutral planet. "Something doesn't sit right." "I don't trust it." Raza raised an eyebrow but nodded, his expression unreadable. "Got it, Captain. I'll gather the team." Quinn turned back to the screen, fingers scrolling through the mission notes once again. Every bit of information seemed too convenient, too clean. It reeked of an orchestrated setup, and she wasn't willing to walk into a trap. Earth's criminals might be dismissed by the Federation, but she had learned the hard way that it wasn't always the obvious threats that came for you first. Zarnath 4 was a desert planet, hot, dry, and forgotten by most of the galaxy. The locals lived in constant fear of the Black Suns, an outlaw group that ran the planet's underground. To most, it was just another place where criminals went to lick their wounds. But Quinn knew better. There was something about the place that suggested more. "We're going to find out why she's been so elusive," Quinn muttered, her fingers drumming on the console. The Etheris descended through the dusty atmosphere of Zarnath 4, its engines roaring as they cut through the thick air. From the cockpit, Quinn watched the barren planet unfold beneath them. There were no signs of life, not a single green patch of vegetation to break up the monotony of sand and stone. It looked like the perfect hiding place for a criminal who had nothing to lose. The team was silent as they prepared for landing. Quinn checked the sensors one last time. Everything seemed clear, but there was an underlying feeling that something was off. As she entered the briefing room, her team was already gathered around the table, weapons and gear neatly arranged in front of them. "Listen up," Quinn began, her voice cutting through the quiet room. "We're here to apprehend Baba Yaga. But don't think for a second this is going to be a simple mission. She's one of the most wanted criminals in the galaxy for a reason. This is not going to be like any other target you've faced." Sergeant Raza looked at her, then at the rest of the team. "We've got this, Captain. We've hunted down worse." Quinn met his gaze with a steely look. "And that's exactly why you're going to keep your guard up. She's not some ordinary criminal. Underestimate her, and it could cost you more than just your life." The team nodded in acknowledgement. Quinn could feel the shift in their demeanor. They respected her, and they respected the mission. But there was an edge in the air that no one could ignore. Baba Yaga had a reputation that preceded her, and no one truly understood what they were up against. "We're moving out in 5, Quinn said. "Stay alert. If she's here, she knows we're coming. We won't have the element of surprise. That means no mistakes." The descent was smooth, the landing gear of the Aetherius touching down in the dust with barely a sound. Quinn and her team disembarked, the dry heat of Zarnath 4 greeting them like a slap to the face. The air was thick with dust, and the horizon stretched endlessly. There were no signs of movement, no indication that anyone was aware of their arrival. "Captain, nothing on sensors," Lieutenant Harlow reported. "No signs of life. The area's completely empty." Quinn scanned the horizon, her instincts telling her that the comm was deceiving. "Let's move. Stay in formation." The team advanced, rifles at the ready. They kept their movements slow and deliberate, careful to avoid making any unnecessary noise. Every step felt like it echoed in the barren landscape. After a few minutes of walking, Quinn signaled to halt. "Set up a perimeter," she ordered. "We're not just going to walk into her trap." The soldiers scattered into position, scanning the surrounding area with practiced efficiency. Quinn's gaze flicked to Raza, who had moved to the far edge of the group. His usual bravado was gone. He, too, could feel the tension in the air. "What do you think, Captain?" he asked quietly. "You think she's here?" Quinn took a deep breath, looking around. "I don't know. But if she is, we'll find her." As the soldiers took their positions, Quinn felt a strange weight settle in her chest. Something was watching them, something that didn't belong to the planet. She couldn't shake the feeling that Baba Yaga was closer than they thought. And soon, they'd discover just how dangerous underestimating this criminal could be. The hunt had begun. The sunless horizon of Zarnath 4 loomed large over Captain Sarah Quinn as her team advanced through the barren landscape. The oppressive heat clung to her uniform, but her focus remained sharp. The air, thick with the scent of dust and metal, held an unsettling stillness, as if the planet itself were holding its breath. "Captain," Lieutenant Harlow's voice broke through her concentration. "Nothing yet. No movement, no sign of her." Quinn nodded but didn't look back. She knew better than to take anything at face value. "Keep looking. She's here. She has to be." They had been walking for hours, their boots crunching against the dry earth, the weight of their gear an unwelcome reminder of the long trek. Each step felt like it brought them closer to something, but Quinn couldn't quite put her finger on it. The emptiness of the planet was unnerving, but she wasn't about to let it cloud her judgment. They had been hunting criminals for years, but none had been quite like this one. Baba Yaga. A name whispered in every corner of the galaxy. Someone whose reputation had reached even the most remote systems. A former military officer turned mercenary, an assassin whose ruthlessness was second only to her intellect. Quinn knew all about the bloody history behind the name, but she didn't believe in myth. She believed in facts, and the fact was that Baba Yaga was still out there. Suddenly, Raza's voice crackled through the comms. "Captain, I've got something." Moving up to investigate. Quinn's pulse quickened. She held up a hand, signaling for the team to stop. Silence fell. Her eyes narrowed as she scanned the horizon, a sinking feeling starting to creep up her spine. There was something wrong. Something wasn't adding up. "Raza, report," Quinn barked, her voice calm but commanding. "I'm approaching an outpost. Looks abandoned, but the signs, they're fresh. Someone's been here recently." "On my way," Quinn replied. She signaled to the team. "Raza's found something. Move out." The soldiers fell into formation, weapons raised, their movements synchronized. Quinn led the way, her mind racing through possibilities. Could this be it? Could Baba Yaga be using this outpost as a hideout? Or was it just another false lead? The uncertainty gnawed at her. Minutes later, they arrived at the outpost, a dilapidated structure on the edge of the desert. The building looked like it had been there for centuries, its walls cracked and weathered by the harsh climate. But as Quinn inspected the surroundings, she saw what Raza had mentioned, signs of recent activity. Footprints, faint but still visible, trailed off into the distance. Whoever was here didn't leave long ago, Quinn muttered. She crouched down, examining the tracks. These are fresh. We're close. Raza emerged from the shadows of the building, his face tense. There's something else, Captain. I found a room with equipment, weapons, some personal items. But no one's here now. Empty? Quinn asked, already moving toward the entrance. I don't buy it. No signs of struggle, no indication they're still here, Raza replied, walking beside her. Could be a decoy. Quinn stepped inside the outpost, scanning the dimly lit room. The walls were lined with old crates, half buried in dust. But as her eyes flicked over the remnants of broken tech and discarded supplies, something caught her attention, a single piece of fabric. It was a dark, faded cloth, but it was unmistakably human in origin. Captain, look at this, Quinn said, picking it up. The fabric was stained, the edges frayed. This isn't just some random piece of junk. It's part of a uniform. A military uniform. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. This is Earth military grade. What the hell is it doing here? Raza stepped forward, inspecting it closely. It's old, Captain. It could have been left behind by any number of people. Quinn shook her head. No. This is her. It has to be. Baba Yaga's past is all over this. She turned toward the rest of the team. Fan out. We need to check the area. She's been here recently. Keep your eyes open. As the team spread out, Quinn couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Her instincts screamed at her to turn around, to be alert, but there was nothing there, nothing but the dead silence of the planet. And then, a voice crackled through the comms again, low and almost mocking. I see you. The hairs on the back of Quinn's neck stood up. She froze. Raza, she whispered, her hand instinctively going to her sidearm. Did you hear that? A long pause before Raza's voice answered, confusion in his tone. Yeah, I heard it too. But I don't see anyone. The voice came again, this time louder, more menacing. You really think you're the first to come looking for me? Quinn's blood ran cold. The voice was unmistakable. It was Baba Yaga. Shit, Raza muttered under his breath. We've walked right into a trap. Get back to the ship. Quinn barked into her comms. Now. But as soon as the order left her mouth, the sound of rustling filled the air. It was too late. The trap had already been sprung. A sudden explosion rocked the outpost, sending debris flying in all directions. Quinn and the team were thrown to the ground, the shock wave knocking the wind out of them. Dust and smoke filled the air, obscuring their vision. Move! Now! Quinn shouted, scrambling to her feet. Her team followed, diving behind cover as more explosions rang out in the distance. Baba Yaga's voice echoed in the chaos, her words chilling as she taunted them. You think you can stop me? You're nothing but children playing soldier. Quinn's heart pounded as she scanned the area. Stay focused. We've got to take her down. But the truth settled in her gut. Baba Yaga was no longer just a criminal. She was a ghost in the wind, a predator with nothing to lose. And this was no longer a simple mission. It was personal. The hunt had begun in earnest, and now, there was no turning back. The dust hung thick in the air, clinging to everything in sight as Quinn and her team regrouped behind the wreckage of the outpost. The explosions had subsided, but the tension in the air was palpable. Quinn's pulse was steady, but inside, the gears were turning relentlessly. This wasn't just a chase anymore. This was something bigger. The team had sustained only minor injuries, but the shock of the explosions had shaken them. Quinn's focus, however, remained razor-sharp. Raza, she snapped, her voice cold. Check the perimeter. Now. Make sure we're not walking into another trap. Raza nodded without a word and moved off toward the wreckage. His footsteps barely audible against the gravel. Quinn stood still, watching him disappear into the smoke, her mind racing. "Captain," Harlow called out. She was crouched behind a pile of debris, studying a set of tracks. "I think we found something." Quinn walked over quickly, her boots crunching against the ground. Harlow pointed to the faint markings left in the dust, footprints, human-sized and unmistakably fresh. "I know," Quinn said, her eyes narrowing. "I saw them too. She's still here. But where?" The planet felt vast now. Zarnath 4, once a desolate and empty wasteland, seemed to be closing in on them. With each passing moment, Quinn felt like they were being pulled deeper into something she couldn't yet see. "Captain," Raza's voice came over the comms, sharp and tense. "I found something. Come quick." Quinn turned immediately. Raza's tone left no room for argument. She motioned for the team to follow and headed toward him. They found Raza kneeling beside a shattered piece of technology. It was a small device, nothing special at first glance, but its components were not of the standard issue she'd seen from most criminal groups. This wasn't just scavenged tech. It was military grade, too advanced to be on the black market. "What is this?" Quinn asked, crouching down beside Raza. Her fingers hovered over the device, careful not to disturb it. Raza glanced up at her, his face tight. "I don't know. But it's clear this tech doesn't belong here. Whoever used this is skilled. Too skilled." Quinn's heart beat faster. Something was off. Baba Yaga had always been just a name, a legend whispered through the galaxy. Now, with the pieces starting to fall into place, Quinn realized she was facing more than just an assassin. Baba Yaga was a ghost, a specter with far more depth than anyone had ever considered. "We need to find her," Quinn muttered under her breath. "Now." The team moved with purpose, sweeping through the wreckage of the outpost. Quinn's mind flickered back to the reports she'd read before leaving the Etherius. They had all painted the same picture, Baba Yaga as a rogue mercenary, a criminal with no allegiance, no cause. She had been blamed for high-profile assassinations, massive terrorist attacks. But the more Quinn uncovered, the more the story didn't add up. There were too many inconsistencies. Why had a woman, once lauded as a military hero, turned to a life of crime? And why did her name echo in the darkest corners of the galaxy? This wasn't just a mission, it was a mystery. Quinn stopped in her tracks, her boots sinking slightly into the dry ground. Something caught her eye. In the distance, barely visible against the sand, was a building, a structure that hadn't been there when they first landed. "I knew it," Quinn whispered to herself, the realization hitting her like a freight train. Baba Yaga had been using the planet as her hideout, but this wasn't just a place to lay low. This was something else entirely. She could feel it in her bones. "Everyone, move," Quinn ordered, her voice carrying across the team. "We're going to that building. Now." As they approached the structure, Quinn's heart began to race. It was a fortress, buried deep in the heart of Zarnath 4. It wasn't just an outpost, it was a base. And it had been carefully concealed. "We've got to be careful," Harlow said as they neared the entrance, her voice low. "She's been watching us. We might walk right into her hands." Quinn nodded, her gaze sharp. "I know. Stay alert." They reached the door, a massive metal slab, but there was no lock, no security system. It was open, almost inviting. Quinn pushed the door cautiously, the heavy metal creaking as it swung inward. The inside was a stark contrast to the wasteland outside. It was clean, sterile even. Holographic displays flickered in the dim light, showing schematics, battle plans, and equipment lists. A high-tech facility, one that reeked of military intelligence. Quinn's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just a hideout. It was a command center. "Baba Yaga has been planning something," Quinn murmured, as she ran a hand over one of the glowing panels. "This isn't a criminal operation. This is military strategy." Raza's voice came over her shoulder, his tone wary. What do you mean? You think she's leading a rebellion? No, Quinn replied, shaking her head. She's been manipulating the system from the inside. These schematics, she pointed at the screens, these are Federation layouts. Military assets. The pieces fell into place with a sickening clarity. Baba Yaga had been playing a long game, one that spanned far beyond what Quinn had initially believed. The woman wasn't just hunting her enemies for revenge, she was dismantling the Federation from the inside, one calculated strike at a time. Look at this, Raza said, pointing to a glowing file. Quinn moved closer, scanning the data. It was a list of Federation officers, their names, ranks, and assignments. But there was something more, notes. Confidential intel. Plans for covert operations. Each document was marked with a code, a signature that no one should have had access to. Quinn's stomach turned. She's been infiltrating the Federation itself. She's more dangerous than I thought. As the reality of Baba Yaga's operations sank in, Quinn felt a sudden, sharp presence behind her. She whirled around, but it was too late. Baba Yaga's voice, smooth and cold, echoed through the facility. I've been waiting for you, Captain. Quinn's hand instinctively reached for her weapon, but she stopped herself. There was no point in rushing. Baba Yaga was already steps ahead of them. Quinn's heart hammered in her chest. The game had changed. And this time, there would be no easy win. You've been underestimating me, Baba Yaga continued, stepping into the dim light. But I've been watching you too. Every move you make, every decision you think you're in control of. You're already too late. Quinn stood tall, facing the woman who had become both her greatest adversary and the key to a galaxy's fractured future. It was clear now, this wasn't just about capturing a criminal. This was about facing a force that could unravel everything they had built. And Quinn had no choice but to play the game. The air inside the facility was thick with tension, every corner echoing with the silent threat that Baba Yaga posed. Quinn's fingers tightened around the grip of her sidearm, but she didn't raise it. Not yet. In front of her, Baba Yaga stood with a calmness that only made her more dangerous. Her eyes, cold as the stars themselves, locked onto Quinn's with an unsettling knowing. You know, Captain, Baba Yaga said, her voice a slow, deliberate drawl. I was hoping you'd be more of a challenge. But you're a predictable one. Every move, every strategy, just like the rest. Quinn's jaw clenched. The woman had a way of making every word feel like a blade to the chest. You've been playing this game for a long time, haven't you? Quinn's voice was steady, even though her insides burned with the need to act. But no more. This ends today. Baba Yaga tilted her head slightly, a smile curving the corner of her lips. Does it, Captain? Or have you just stepped into my game? The realization hit Quinn with the force of a punch. This wasn't a confrontation in the usual sense. Baba Yaga wasn't just a criminal. She was a master manipulator. And Quinn had walked right into her trap. Tell me, Baba Yaga continued, her words dripping with venom. Do you think you know the truth? Do you really believe the Federation's version of events? Or are you just another pawn in their little war? Quinn didn't flinch. She had prepared for this. She had seen the way the Federation operated, the lies they spread to maintain control. But she had always trusted her instincts. And now, they were telling her that there was far more to this than she had ever imagined. Enough games, Quinn snapped. You've done enough damage. Baba Yaga laughed, a low, guttural sound that sent a chill through the room. Damage? Oh, Captain, you have no idea what I've done. The Federation, the so-called protectors of the galaxy, they're the real criminals here. You've been chasing ghosts while they've been pulling the strings. For the first time, Quinn hesitated. She had heard whispers, rumors, things that didn't fit. The Federation was powerful, but it wasn't without its flaws. And now, standing face to face with the woman who had spent years working in the shadows, Quinn wasn't so sure who the real enemy was. What are you talking about? Quinn asked, her voice barely above a whisper, but sharp with disbelief. The Federation has kept peace across the galaxy. It's the foundation of everything we've built. Baba Yaga's expression darkened. That's what they want you to believe. But peace isn't their goal, Captain. Control is. They've created a system, a hierarchy, and they've used people like me to do their dirty work. They've sent us to destroy, to eliminate those who stand in their way. All while hiding behind their false sense of justice. Quinn took a step back, her mind spinning. The Federation had always portrayed themselves as the arbiters of peace, the ones who kept the galaxy in check. But as Baba Yaga's words sank in, Quinn's mind began to unravel the carefully constructed narrative she had always believed. You're lying, Quinn said, though the conviction in her voice faltered. They're not like that. Am I? Baba Yaga's smile was chilling. You've been trained to follow orders, to trust in the system. But one day, you'll realize that you've been serving the wrong masters. You think you're doing the right thing, but you're just another cog in their machine. Just like me. For a moment, Quinn felt her grip on reality slip. The Federation, her family, her duty, everything she had worked for, was crumbling before her eyes. Was it really possible that everything she had been taught was a lie? No. She couldn't afford to believe that. She had spent years believing in the Federation's mission. If she allowed herself to doubt it now, everything she stood for would fall apart. But there was something else, a nagging thought that refused to go away. If Baba Yaga was right, then the galaxy was in far more danger than Quinn had ever realized. You've been hunting me, Baba Yaga said, her voice turning cold again. But I didn't start this war. I'm not the one pulling the strings. I've been trying to end it. The Federation is the true threat. And you, Captain, you're just another weapon they've used. Quinn's eyes burned with frustration. I won't let you manipulate me. Not anymore. Baba Yaga's gaze softened for a fleeting second, but the smile never left her face. You think you have control, but you're already too deep. The question is, how far are you willing to go to see the truth? Quinn's hand tightened around her weapon. The air seemed to vibrate with tension, each moment stretched thin between them. She could feel it, Baba Yaga was trying to break her, to force her into a choice. And it was working. I'm done with your games, Quinn spat. I'm ending this now. In the blink of an eye, Quinn drew her sidearm and fired. The shot rang out with a sharp crack, but Baba Yaga was already gone. She moved with such speed that Quinn barely saw her, only the afterimage of movement before she was gone from sight. Damn it! Quinn cursed under her breath, her instincts telling her to prepare for the worst. She spun, searching for any sign of Baba Yaga's presence, but the room was empty. Dead silent. But then, from the shadows, Baba Yaga's voice came again, this time not mocking, but almost understanding. You're still so predictable, Captain. Always rushing in, always thinking you're in control. But the truth, it's never as simple as a gunshot. Quinn's heart pounded as the realization hit her. This wasn't just a battle of force, it was a battle of minds. Baba Yaga had always been 3 steps ahead, and no matter how fast Quinn moved, she was playing catch-up. You can keep running, Captain, Baba Yaga continued, her tone low and dangerous, but in the end, you'll see that we're not so different. You'll understand what I'm trying to do. Quinn shook her head, rage flooding her chest. I'll never agree with you. The silence that followed was deafening, but Quinn was resolute. The final confrontation was not over. It had just begun. And she would not stop until she had answers.